is more than any other country. President Joe Biden announced a series of measures yesterday aimed at ramping up coronavirus vaccine allocation and distribution, including the purchase of 200 million more vaccine doses and increased distribution to states by millions of doses next week. Democrats in the U.S. Senate will move forward on President Joe Biden's coronavirus relief plan without Republican support if necessary, according to Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer yesterday. The Biden administration is actively looking at expanding mandatory COVID-19 testing to travelers on U.S. domestic flights, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. President Joe Biden announced this purchase of additional 200 million doses of coronavirus vaccines as the country hit another grim milestone, reaching 25 million infections. The Texas Department of State Health Services says 1,400,000 people have received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccination. And President Biden's approval rating in his first days in office is higher than Donald Trump ever achieved during his 4 years as president. For anyone inclined to care about such things, President Biden's inauguration last Wednesday drew higher ratings than former President Trump's swearing in 4 years earlier, according to a Nielsen report. And the Senate has voted to confirm Anthony Blinken as the new U.S. Secretary of State. A longtime Biden associate, he was approved by a vote of 78 to 22. All but 5 Senate Republicans voted in favor of an effort to dismiss Donald Trump's historic second impeachment trial, making clear a conviction of the former president for incitement of insurrection after the deadly Capitol siege on the 6th of January is unlikely. 2 people were found dead following a more than 6-hour SWAT standoff in central Austin, and that happened last night. The TSA has announced that almost double the amount of firearms were caught at airport security checkpoints last year compared to the previous year, despite a significant decrease in travel due to the coronavirus pandemic. And a U.S. bankruptcy judge has approved a $17 million payout to dozens of women who accused jailed movie producer Harvey Weinstein of sexual abuse. The 68-year-old was sentenced to 23 years in prison last year after being convicted of rape and sexual assault. The month of January is not going out quietly, with 4 storms set to hit the continental United States through this Friday. In the last 24 hours, rare snowfall dusted the Las Vegas Strip as Omaha, Nebraska experienced its snowiest day in 45 years. And along the East Coast, Washington finally broke its snowless streak with 0.3 inches and the first measurable snow there in 372 days. A pair of astronauts went spacewalking today to install a high-speed data link outside the International Space Station's European lab. President Joe Biden and Russian leader Vladimir Putin held their first conversation as counterparts in a phone call yesterday evening that underscored troubled relations and the delicate balance between the two former Cold War foes. The Biden administration laying out its policies on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and stressing its intention to renew ties with the Palestinian Authority. Israel's West Bank settler population has grown at a far higher rate than the country as a whole over the last 4 years, a period that coincides with the Trump administration's unprecedented acceptance of settlement activity. The United States says Eritrean forces should leave Tigray immediately. A State Department spokesperson said that they cited credible reports of looting, sexual violence, assaults on refugee camps and other human rights abuses. Aid distribution increased in Sana'a after the United States the day before approved all transactions involving Yemen's Houthi movement for the next month. The move comes as Washington is reviewing the Trump administration's designation of the Iran-aligned group as a foreign terrorist organization, which has slowed down aid to the war-torn country. Iranian and Taliban officials, meanwhile, met in Tehran today and accused the U.S. of provoking the continuation of war in Afghanistan. The Taliban's notorious Haqqani network faction has discussed forming a joint unit with al-Qaeda as the terrorist group gains strength in Afghanistan. It is the Taliban militant movement giving its backing today for a coronavirus vaccination campaign in Afghanistan that has received a $112 million pledge from the World Health Organization. Mali's army and French forces in the West African nation have killed at least 100 Islamic extremists so far this year. And imams across Britain are helping to drive and dispel coronavirus disinformation using Friday sermons and their influential standing within Muslim communities to argue that COVID-19 vaccines are safe. People testing positive for the new British variant of the coronavirus are more likely to report coughing, sore throat or fatigue as symptoms of COVID-19, but are less likely to lose their sense of taste or smell. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the World News on Radio Caravan. Pope Francis marked Holocaust Remembrance Day today by warning that warped ideologies can pave the way to another mass extermination. He spoke off the cuff at the end of this weekly general audience held in his private library because of the coronavirus restrictions to commemorate the 76th anniversary of the Holocaust, and the Argentine Pope insisted on the need to remember, saying it was a sign of humanity and a condition for a peaceful future. But he said remembering also means to be aware that these things can happen again, starting with ideological proposals that claim to save a people and end up destroying a people and humanity. The German government is to consider introducing tough new restrictions on international travel in a bid to prevent the coronavirus mutations from entering the country. And Dutch police said that the fourth night of the Netherlands coronavirus curfew last night passed more peacefully than the previous 3 nights marred by rioting. Even so, officers arrested 131 people, mainly for public order offences and incitement. Australia has recorded a 10th straight day of no new local COVID-19 cases, allowing its most populous state of New South Wales to relax coronavirus restrictions after controlling a fast-spreading cluster. And China is asking Indonesia to treat detained sailors fairly. The Iranian-flagged MT Horse and the Panamanian-flagged MT Freya were seized and are suspected of illegally transferring fuel at sea, shutting off their identification systems and other offences. Indonesian authorities said 36 Iranian and 25 Chinese crew members were detained. China's coronavirus vaccine is supposed to deliver a geopolitical win that showcased the country's scientific prowess and generosity. Instead, in some places, they have set off a backlash. Officials in Brazil and Turkey have complained that Chinese companies have been slow to ship the doses as well as the ingredients. COVID-19 vaccination programs in China and India will stretch until late 2022. Due to the sheer size of their population, and more than 85 poor countries will not have widespread access to vaccines before 2023, according to this study this morning. India's COVID-19 tally mounted with 12,689 new cases in a day. And a day after farmers' tractor rally turned violent in Delhi, Union Home Minister Amit Shah took stock of the security situation and measures taken to ensure peace in the city. Tens of thousands of farmers who stormed the historic Red Fort on India's Republic Day yesterday were again camped outside the capital today after the most volatile day of their 2-month standoff left a protester dead and more than 80 police officers injured. The protests demand the repeal of new agricultural laws that have grown into a rebellion that is rattling Prime Minister Modi's government. And the day after this, protesting against agricultural reforms breached barricades and clashed with police in the capital, breaching most of the rules pre-agreed upon with the government for a peaceful protest. 22 FIRs have been lodged over the violence that took place on Republic Day yesterday. And farmers' body Samyukta Kisan Morcha alleged antisocial elements like actor Deep Sidhu attempted to torpedo their peaceful agitation under a conspiracy, but asserted they won't allow the government and other forces inimical to the peaceful movement to break this struggle. Maharashtra Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray said areas dominated by Marathi-speaking people on the state's border with Karnataka should be declared as a union territory till the Supreme Court gives its final verdict on that issue. He was speaking at the launch of a book on the boundary dispute between the two states. Former All India Anna DMK General Secretary V.K. Shashikala was released from the central jail. However, doctors treating the 66-year-old for COVID-19 at the Victoria Hospital have advised against discharging her for the next 2 to 3 days. BCCI President Saurav Ganguly was hospitalized again with discomfort in the chest less than a month after he underwent angioplasty. The IPL Players Auction ahead of the 2021 edition will be held in Chennai on the 18th of February. And members of the England cricket team, including Captain Joe Root, have arrived in Chennai today for the 4-match series against India, with the first 2 tests to be played in Chennai itself. And Cricket Australia probe concluded Indian players were racially abused during the 3rd test at the Sydney Cricket Ground, but cleared 6 people who were kicked out of the stadium. Fawad Alam scored his first test century at home today as Pakistan extended its lead in the final session on the 2nd day of the opening test in Karachi. And a Malaysian court has ordered the immediate release of a Pakistan International Airlines plane that was held in the Southeast Asian country nearly 2 weeks ago due to a British court case over the jet's lease. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all that I have in the news for you today on this